Hello everyone, welcome to today's Water Cooler Chat, where we talk about all things Livepeer, whether it's orchestrating, delegating, broadcasting, transcoding, or anything to do with the Livepeer ecosystem. We're here to ask questions and get answers. We got a few topics ahead of us, and actually, Doug, if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind starting off on your topic, which was around splitting of the stake and the random stream selection process. It seems as though one of the orchestrators or somebody, I'm not too sure, but they had created how many orchestrator nodes? Like 8 or 10 of them?
12, I think.
12? Oh, wow, 12. Okay. So over 10 or 12% of the network, essentially, into kind of one orchestrator that is attempting to gain more random selection. This has had a few backlashes. One is the amount to get in is much higher, and all these things. Doug, do you want to start us off with your take on this particular topic?
Sure. So a little bit of background. I probably have the time frame wrong, but let's say 6 months ago or 4 months ago, there was a kind of a topic that was heavily discussed, which is, hey, the stake weighted nature of the orchestrator work selection algorithm is making it such that it's very difficult for new orchestrators or smaller orchestrators to access any work. Right? The majority of the video encoding jobs were going to the nodes that had a lot of stake, according to sort of the intention of the original protocol design. And new orchestrators were getting so little work, it was beyond test streams, that it was hard for them to earn fees or to kind of prove their reliability on the network. And so one of the suggestions around this, or the solution that eventually worked its way through, was let's increase the randomization for some portion of the node selection algorithm. So let's send, and I actually don't know the number, whether it's 20% or 30% of the streams are go to orchestrators that are kind of not based on the stake weighted selection, but are just randomly selected.
I
And of
believe
course,
it's
they have to
30%.
perform well in order to retain those streams. But they at least like have a chance to perform well and earn the work there, right? So I think that took effect via just a client update that updated the selection algorithm a few months back, and unsurprisingly, if the result is that, hey, the more nodes that you have, the more randomized jobs you'll get, and the more fees you'll earn, unsurprisingly, people decided to split their stake from one node into multiple nodes in order to earn more of those randomized streams. And so I think that's the situation that happened. I'll quickly say, although I see negative effects on the network, some of which you highlighted, like it costs more for a new node operator to join the network because they have to break into the top 100 and have more stake than the 100th highest staked O. I see that as a negative effect. I see some other negative effects. I actually, I don't begrudge someone for making that choice necessarily, or at least I understand why someone would make that choice, and they have the right to. That's the rules of the protocol and the code implementation that they're following. At the moment, they're kind of acting in a rational way economically. But at the same time, I do think we should look at the design of the algorithm. We should look at the protocol itself. We should look at the parameters on the network and say, what can we do to either minimize the negative impacts of this sort of behavior, or encourage better kind of stake distribution and delegation amongst kind of token holding delegators in order to lead to better, more rewarding outcomes. So I have some thoughts on this, but I'll pause there for the background.
Yeah, definitely. That was a really good introduction into this particular topic. Does anyone else have any thoughts or comments or initial things they want to that their reaction was to this particular kind of thing that happened, I guess?
I'll just say, I don't like commenting in the threads and things like that. And initially, it was kind of like, wow, somebody would actually do that. That was my initial gut reaction. But at the end of the day, as Doug pointed out, it's within the rights of whomever's out there doing what they're doing. It just, as a participant in the network, and I want to see as many orcs out there running high performing and doing that. It, kind of irks me a little bit. I don't like it all makes sense, and everyone's got their right to do that. I'm not saying don't do it, nor am I a fan of penalizing people. And I think if there's a protocol change that could make better outcomes for the end result, which is providing a service that customers value and use, and that are not, that are cheaper than the alternatives, I think, in that spirit, we probably might want to look at some ways to make it a little more quality and performance based. And if they can perform and do quality, maybe even expand the orchestrator count greater than 100. I mean, whatever that may entail. But those are my thoughts.
Yeah, my initial thoughts on this whole situation, this mainly came up because of the economic reasoning behind random selection. And I will say that the random selection upgrade that happened, I think, has overall been very positive for the network. So much so that I actually do think it outweighs in its current format, current situation, outweighs the detriment of this one particular person taking up 12 nodes. The fact that we've had this randomness has given like 50 different active orchestrators more opportunity to be involved and care, and I think that has been actually more beneficial overall. So I will say that the random selection has been like a blessing. So for I think the network in general. But I do think this issue is actually a lot more complicated than people think. And I'll give an example. Back when there wasn't quite 100 orchestrators filled, and the amount to get in was roughly 1 LPT, and most people weren't even transcoding on the network at the time when I joined. But there was this. It wasn't a randomness selection, but it was a part of the selection algorithm was if you were within 8 milliseconds, or at least within the first top 8 spots that responded to a B, you would get into this working set of 8. And so having a VPS close to the server ended up being really important. And I thought, hey, I could game this. So I spun up 8 orchestrator nodes, and I put them within 0.5 milliseconds of one of the the ingest nodes for Livepeer, in hopes that I would clog up the entire working set and therefore get all the work for that node, right? So even if it's not randomness, I think that even other things in the selection algorithm are going to drastically change how many spots maybe orchestrators want to take up in the working set of 100, right? I think there's a lot of knock-on effects that happen with any change to the selection algorithm. So I just wanted to point that out too. That this is actually, I think, a pretty complicated situation. But yeah, so the selection algorithm created this problem. Doug, do you want to take us into, you mentioned a little bit about stake distribution or different changes we can make. Do you want to go into maybe some solutions that you could think of that have come to your mind?
Yeah, I mean, even before I go into solutions that impact like the current state of the network and like the current steps we could do, I think your point about this being, a complicated or more complex consideration is worth realizing. Like longer term, like what should the ideal selection algorithm be, right? There's different selection algorithms that may apply to different types of use cases, right? Someone doing a thought encoding where they don't care at all about performance and just want the lowest cost would use like a different algorithm than someone doing a live encoding that needs ultra low latency turnaround with high reliability, and they're willing to pay a higher price for it, right? And so there's all these different inputs. I think the things that ultimately create the equal level playing field with the marketplaces. Hey, people are taking into consideration price. They're taking into consideration, performance and consistency. They're taking, ping time and location, latency. They're taking into consideration stake as a form of security, if and when there's, slashing enabled for certain types of jobs. And so this actually means like there's different broadcasters, there's many different broadcasters running sort of different algorithms with different preferences. And then it's, you can try and game one to your heart's content, but it's just this like big global messy marketplace where all of the demand that has unique constraints are fulfilled by all the supply that are doing the best possible job across all those vectors to serve them. And so, yeah, just remember that's where ultimately we want to go, and that's why everyone should have like the best like long-term interests of the network at heart, because any of the like temporary solutions that we propose right now maybe like help, but only makes sense in the context of the hosted gateway being the main broadcaster on the network, and there being primarily one type of job that everyone's competing for, right? And that might be like a band-aid, but is that really going to lead us where ultimately like this network is the most healthy? So anyway, a little bit of background there, but what are some potential solutions in the short term? Two that come to mind. One is reducing the amount of the percentage of randomization in the selection algorithm, right? Some went so far as to say we should eliminate it entirely. It should only be stake-based. Like you said, it's done a lot of good. Is 30% or 20% the right number? I don't know. I might question like, what's the minimum amount of randomization necessary such that new joiners of the network actually receive enough jobs to cover their costs or to prove their performance, right? And maybe that's not a percentage. Maybe it's a fixed amount of work for each node under a certain amount of stake or something like that. So we could look at solutions like that would just create less incentive to fill up more slots. Maybe if you're only getting a 2% gain or a 5% gain, it's not worth it for the operational overhead versus the 30% gain that you might get right now. And so that's one idea. The other is expanding the number of orchestrator slots on the network. So if it were 200 instead of 100, then yes, people still might split stake in order to take more slots, but sort of the more you split your stake, the more overhead you have and the less stake is on each node. And maybe right now I think it's 2000 LPT to get into the working set. Maybe that gets reduced or dropped down to a couple hundred LPT and it becomes more accessible again. And so it's a band-aid, but it also creates slots for more people to get involved in the project and compete for the network. And by the way, like if stake does represent security and there were slashing enabled and you did want to be sure that your work was being encoded by a node that had enough to risk such that they're not messing with the transcoding, like you probably do want a couple thousand LPT at least on the node. So people have even proposed, should this network have a minimum stake? Like should no one with under X amount of delegated stake be able to encode because it's too risky for the broadcaster? I won't give an opinion on that, but it's along those same lines of thinking, just to indicate, hey, if you have 10 LPT on your node, you're probably not providing enough security to give a broadcaster confidence that you're doing that work correctly anyway.
Oh, those are some interesting points. I don't think I've ever, two of those I didn't even think of, which was, so three solutions just to reiterate. One was reduce the randomness factor. The second was maybe opening up more slots available on the list, and the third was implementing maybe like a minimum stake. So yeah, those are some three factors. Which one do you think is? I'll stop it there. Feedback from the community. Do any of those seem interesting? Any issues with any of these suggestions or ideas?
I personally wouldn't increase the amount of orchestrators, at least if we keep the 30% randomness, because that would essentially mean that all current orchestrators only get half the amount of random jobs, and it basically plays in the hand of those like who use this randomness to exploit or like get streams from the random distribution. So I mean, if that person would set up another 10 orgs and maybe another person who read the thread will join them, then we have like the 100 additional slots filled up pretty quickly. And yeah, the result is basically that we're giving them streams. So I wouldn't really do that. I don't think currently it's a big issue. We could also just leave it as is, and maybe in the future it gets harder to split up the stake to get more nodes because the minimum stake required gets higher. So that would also be an option.
I tend to agree with Varies. I think out of the three options we have, the two that Doug mentioned and the present situation, I feel like leaving it as is kind of better than the other two options. At least until maybe there are some tweaks to the performance mechanism, and maybe we don't need that random selection in there, which I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that would pretty much fix it, right? If there was some way to gauge performance in the future, you wouldn't need the randomization, and then there would be no point running multiple nodes, at least that many, and spreading your stake.
Yeah, that's right. Like removing the randomness altogether would eliminate this problem, though it introduces other potential issues. Though I do believe the like test streams were sort of intended to be a part solution there. Like it allows anyone to establish a performance score and earn some fees for test streams, hopefully enough to attract delegation to win more jobs. But yeah, I guess with the current level of demand on the network and not enough diversity of broadcasters, it doesn't go quite far enough. But yeah, Ben, I think your points are accurate.
Awesome. Yeah, I think as the network evolves, and I think it will, whether that's the community helping develop it or Livepeer Inc., these sort of issues will probably fade away organically as long as the protocol does evolve and there are, more maturity to the selection algorithm and to performance and things like that.
Yeah,
That's my two.
yeah, I like it. Does anyone else, sorry, didn't mean to jump in here. Does anyone else have any ideas that they would propose as a solution, or, like I said, want to comment on the current things Doug was talking about? I think we covered most of it as far as like when it comes to solutions. We have reduced randomness factors, more slots, a minimum stake, which no one really talked about, which I find interesting. The only thing is, if we only have 100 orchestrator spots, the minimum stake is kind of already kind of fulfilled, because say we arbitrarily pick 1,000 stake for enough security for a broadcaster. Well, we're already at 2,000, so naturally I think that will already hit a minimum which is sufficient for the network. Maybe that was an issue in the past when you could deposit one LPT and be an orchestrator. But as for minimum stake, I think that already is validated by the public, like by a free market choices, by having a limited number of slots. So just my 2 cents on the minimum stake idea. And then the other two options I've written down were stake distribution. So kind of back to this point that we've had over the years, which is this idea of increasing the diversity of stake amongst high performing orchestrators. And that would also solve this problem a little bit. And then as well as a performance selection. But as we've spoke about a lot in the past, is how do you objectively measure performance? That's a really tough thing to do. So
yeah, I do think the new like block list feature in Go Livepeer is a cool building block for that, right? Like anyone could implement a performance service where they construct a list and broadcast nodes could subscribe to it. And that's not, you're still like trusting whoever you're subscribing to, but everyone has their own choice whether they want to subscribe, not subscribe, which performance testing service do you want to trust. It's kind of an open, extensible way to build those sorts of things.
very good. Well, based on the conversation, it sounds like this is not a critical issue and likely something that will kind of work its way through the system as we get more interest in orchestrators. In the short term, though, do we see reducing the randomness factor as a viable option?
I would just put that in the bucket of like, let's continue to test and evolve the best orchestrator selection algorithms. And it'd be great to see, alternate broadcasters, playing with their own variations of those algorithms and sharing results and learning and making different algorithms available. So yeah, I think it's definitely a maybe, but I don't know if it's obvious, what number to drop it to that solves this sort of minor issue that's happening right now.
Yeah. By the way, you used one of my favorite phrases. That's a definite maybe. Like, it's a perfect oxymoron. Cool. Okay. Well, any other comments on the stake splitting random selection topic? Any last comments anyone wants to sign in there before we move on? Okay, very good. Okay, we'll move on to some other topics. I see that Marco is actually in the audience, and we had some questions by Papa Bear about introspection and some Prometheus. So, Papa Bear, do you want to talk about your topic? Maybe you could appetite Marco's taste buds to join us up on stage.
I know it's late for Marco, but assuming you're actually listening to. I brought up what we spoke about earlier, just with the introspection pages and doing low-key queries on there, just basically grinding the server down to just overloading it by just trying to pull in a day's worth of data and having to do that each time. And you mentioned something about having a Prometheus in between there that is incrementing the data so that it doesn't have to do a full query every time you're trying to look up data. So I didn't really know how to explain it. I don't understand exactly how it would work, but I think for it to be more usable and to be able to really look and dig deeper into that, the data, and again, especially with Brad, who's now here too, adding more to even more data to the logs. That is just, this problem is going to get even worse and just make it harder to actually really dig in and look at more than like the last hour or two worth of streams, where it might be hard to really recognize patterns over a short period of time like that, where I'd be able to go back to a week or at least a few days and be able to just look at performance and swaps and just all the stuff that I could see on Brad's test stream site right now, which is nice. We can really dig deep, and I don't know if we could get that deep, but it maybe at least something in the middle of that. So that was just kind of my thing. Is it's kind of it's usable now, but it doesn't have the. I feel like it could be more usable if you could get go back a little further, and it's not the data isn't there. It's just that it's not really being served up in the right way, I guess. Marco?
Oh,
Yeah, so that's the thing, right? Currently, no, it works fine, but it has to go through all of the logs, extract some values, and then it basically counts those. So those are perfect to expose on Prometheus instead. However, the issue is here that you don't want to expose the entire broadcaster to the public, right? You want to have maybe only specific statistics out there. So it's definitely something which would have to be planned. Someone has to, think of a way how to implement that. It's not an easy task to just switch to Prometheus for that. But yeah.
but couldn't you?
I was
Oh, go
sorry,
ahead.
Titan. Just a quick background on the adding the new logs. I'm going to do it incrementally. Like the first one I'm working on is the selection part of it. Even though we all kind of know how the selection algorithm is working currently, I think that's a good first one to add to it. Beyond right now, it's just the performance, if I remember right. But trying to add the rest of it onto that. But what Marco's saying about like putting Prometheus in there and some of the metrics. So Marco, are you saying like parse the logs and put that into metrics?
Well, so I think you're talking about adding some more logging in there because I don't
Yeah.
think there's any information on why an orchestrator really got selected, and that's like the most interesting piece of data we can get there.
Yeah. And
You
that's what
only
I'm
know
working on
that there is a
first.
swapping happening, and so you only know when someone is performing badly, and you can count those. So that's I have my own dashboard, which counts the amount of unique streams, amount of swaps happening per orchestrator. That's separate from the reason of why they're being swapped, of course.
Yeah. And if the selection, like all the selection points are added, you can at least see if you're in, if you've ever been selected at all. If you don't,
Yeah.
not everybody keeps logs for, eternity. But on the Prometheus part, I was messing with like Grafana Cloud on my test broadcaster, and I tried to send up my Prometheus metrics, and I had way too many. So I'd be interested if anybody has any input on how to limit the metrics going to a Prometheus instance from the Go Livepeer broadcaster. The caveat is I also had on metrics per stream, and I turned that off. That should help a little bit.
Yeah, that definitely swells them up having the metrics per stream on. But yeah, I just, I mean, it's a lot of data, so I don't really know how that works. And I don't know if there's a way to take like, if there's a way to like take data from like a Loki and then throw that into Prometheus so that you're not exposed. Because I mean, I know that the reason that Loki's set up is so that it can filter the logs out and not expose the complete broadcaster logs. So I just don't know enough about how that works behind the scenes. If there's a way to filter those down into Prometheus to not expose everything, but still make it accessible in a way where it doesn't have to just hammer and go through every. I mean, there's just so much data. I mean, I understand what's happening as far as like it being too much to process, but it's yeah, I just don't know what the solution is to make it like where that data is there and that we can actually see it without just having some crazy ass beefy server to serve it out.
How far back are you able to go right now? Is it like 6 hours, 12 hours?
I mean, 6 hours works pretty well. If 12 hours works maybe like 50% of the time, and you start to go to like 24 hours, and it's like that's where it really starts to fall apart.
Okay.
And I see that, like just like again, even if I'm just like trying to look at my own, node's performance, it still has to pull all the logs to do that. So it's really, it doesn't matter, if you're trying to look at everyone's performance or just your own. So I'm getting the same issue on my, the queries that I'm running for myself as I do when I try and look at Marco's dashboard.
Marco, do you know if like Promtail was able to get more keys, if that would help limit the pulls from Loki? Is it right now, is it only the region that's the key that comes out of Promtail?
Well, I think that would help. Let's see. In some of these queries,
So like we added the address of the orchestrator to that, then each of us could pull our own stuff only.
Yeah. currently I'm extracting all of the keys from the log line itself. You can have a pattern for that.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's really the difficult part here. It's just when you go over a long period of time, you have tens of thousands of logs to go over, and Prometheus is made for a time series database, which is very small to do a week or a month if you want to. So
It just has to be parsed from the logs and put into a metric. It's not
Yeah, I
all
think that's
formatting.
the issue is, as we point out, metrics counters are append only, right? You just keep adding, and Prometheus is really good at calculating and summing and all of that. But when you start looking at log lines, you're trying to, it's more like calculating rate of change, where it's variable based on the data set you're given. So as that data set shifts from time period A to time period B, you have to reevaluate all the data again, and it's just too much. So I think I don't know if there's an easy way to solve it. I mean, I think labels on Promtail will give you some way to filter the queries a little more, but you still have to parse the log lines to get metrics data out. And I think that's where you're going to see a lot of the time spent.
So it's still going to pull every single log line, even if you say my orchestrator region, New York, it's still going to pull them all. Or is it only
it'll
going to pull those
narrow it.
keys?
It'll narrow
Okay.
it. Yeah, it'll narrow it, but it'll still be a large data set that's going to probably
Still gotta
cause
go
the
through.
CPU to go spinning.
But it still has to search through all those to find you, though, out of those logs.
That's some of that part is those logs will come in from Promtail with the labels already, so they can be indexed separate from the total list. But I still, as time progresses, that the total data set gets larger and larger.
Yeah, that's true.
Brad, I know, Brad, your data set isn't as large because you're not running
Yes,
you don't have as many things
a
coming in
few
as
orders of
Livepeer.
magnitude probably lower.
Yeah, but like, how are you, like, where are you storing that data? Like, do you have
I
a
just
database set up?
use it's in Python, and I use like the Docker connection. I don't know the right term, and I pull the logs through the Docker system, and I just store it in Redis right now.
And is that not scalable to be able to handle? Like, why would we run into these same issues if you tried to pull all that stuff and do it?
I could try. I don't know. Never tried. I don't have a lot of experience with Loki, but if I pulled it from Loki, and I'm gonna refactor how my backend kind of does this, where I'm gonna save it so I don't have to keep repulling every time. So every time I pull, I'll just use another timestamp or use the last timestamp, and it'll start pulling that way. But I'm willing to give it a shot. Just kind of see what happens, though. Not sure though.
Fair enough.
But how long do you want to see? 5 days? 10 days? 30
I mean,
days?
even a couple
A
days
year is
would
going
be
to be
great.
kind of rough. I think.
No. I mean, honestly, a few days would be nice. I mean, definitely, I'd like to be able to see a day without it, having, crashing on me for sure. But a few days would be nice. I mean, a week would probably be. I mean, I don't know. I mean, even I mean, a week would probably be like what I would in my mind think would be about right. But yeah, I mean,
And how
just
I
to even
kind
be
of
able
see this is kind of a lift and shift, right? Where it's moving that process of fetching the data to the background. And then when you hit the website or hit the graph, it will just pull whatever the last whatever the last time it went through it was. It's kind of what mine's doing now.
yeah, I mean
Where it's doing all
I mean,
that processing in the background, and it's every time
yeah,
you
and
hit
again,
selection
that's
test, it's not pulling the data on demand from the log.
right. So but I just don't know it when you like go, scale it up to, all the broadcasters that, Livepeer Inc. is running, what, if that even is scalable. I just don't know enough about databases to know like what happens. Like you said, it's an order of magnitude larger. So is it going to still be an issue? Just a different issue.
Yep, but I think we knew this was going to happen. There's going to be some growing pains here.
Well, there we go.
All right. Well, I feel like I got some good minds that are aware of what the issue is. So if you guys could figure something out, great. And if you can't, then it probably can't be done. So, but yeah, that was just kind of my observation from trying to keep up with just the swaps and stuff. And again, I also am thinking forward to like when the performance stuff is in there, or selection and all that stuff, which is I think interesting to be able to see that this problem's going to get even it's going to be more of an issue. So I just want to make sure that all this data we're pulling is accessible somehow, or at least
On the
some of it.
on the performance side of things, like the total transcode time, upload, download, is there any specific one you'd like to see first?
I mean,
the
I
transcode time is
I
kind of
love
when the
data.
orchestrator has it, right? And then you have the download and upload. The total transcode time is kind of like when it's with the orchestrator set up, and that is more, that part of it specifically, that data point is the most in control, so to speak, of the orchestrator. Download, upload, don't really have control over unless you're running something else on your server that's eating up bandwidth.
Right. Well, you don't have control over it, but it's nice to see if you're not being able to keep up with that. So, I mean, ideally, they're all important. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I kind of feel like I know what my machine's hardware can do as far as transcoding goes. So for me, actually, I guess the up and down is probably more important to see, even though that's out of my control. But you also know, like, you know what, the server is maybe not a great server if it's running into issues.
Yeah. And the other side of it, of the logs, the other major part to me was when transcoding fails, like the error that the broadcaster sees, gets,
Yeah,
and spits out.
yeah,
That's kind of a different class. It's just a way to
yeah,
see, like, hey, this one just stopped out of nowhere. Maybe I
yeah.
can
No,
go pull some
that
data. Maybe I can make sense of why it stopped, or was it my fault or not?
yeah, that one that's a biggie to know. Like, yeah, was it what happened there? Like, why did I get swapped out?
Especially on some of these that keep bouncing around that you see.
Yeah, well,
there.
those I've just written off as that's a bad stream. That's something that's not compatible with the network. I mean, if there's a stream that's bouncing around 60 plus times, then it's made it through enough orchestrators to know that the issue is something with that stream. Not. I mean,
That's true.
not that many orchestrators are not able to keep up. I mean, the luck that would have to be to go to that many poor performing orchestrators is kind of off the chart. So. So yeah, I mean, for the streams where you see a lot of swaps like that, I'm sure it would be great to know. I think for Livepeer more than anything, but and be able to stop those from continuing to go through the network. I mean, hey, as someone who's getting paid for the attempt to transcode it, send them along. But sucks
Yeah,
for
that ticket comes on the first one.
Yeah, it sucks for the broadcaster to have to keep sending that stream out if no one can transcode it. So kind of a separate issue, but.
Yeah, on a failed, we talked about this last week, right? Where the failed stream just keeps bouncing around. Xenon was experiencing that. It's definitely something that, caused unnecessary payment on the broadcaster side.
Yeah, no, and I mean, it happens to Ink too, but there's so many more streams that it's just not as big of an issue, just by percentage, or maybe it is by percentage, but I guess overall, just the amount of work. But yeah, it seems like there should be something in place that's able to catch that a stream is like swapped over a certain amount of times, and maybe just pull it out of the network for efficiency. Or again, for waste. I mean, you're paying for something that can't get transcoded. Doesn't seem to make sense, but a little off of trying to just view the what's happening behind the scenes.
There we go.
Well, I guess it's stuff to think about, for the smarter people out there and understand databases and more about how Prometheus and Loki work. But seems like there should be some way to more efficiently view the data than is currently its current implementation.
I mean, it would be possible to convert the Loki logs into Prometheus data points, but it would be more efficient to look into a solution where we just do it directly from the broadcasting node, like with we're doing with Loki right now. But if it's possible.
Oh, so you're saying add more metric data points that the broadcaster's just tracking, right?
Yeah,
All right.
something like that.
I don't think I picked up on that earlier, so thank you for that clarification.
So that would mean that like Prometheus is just like making a separate things that you can search for. So it's still working the way that Prometheus works for any other metric, but it's able to not have to search through everything. It's still going to be, those are still going to be some pretty big logs though. Huh?
Yeah, because every time Prometheus scrapes, it just takes whatever the data is given, and then that's the historical information. Every time it pulls that, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but like even in the buckets, the counters, all of that, it just pulls that data, inputs it, and it timestamps it, whatever that time is that it pulls, and that's where you can start pulling the data over time.
So it doesn't, it
Yep.
won't like
Every
continually go
scrape
back and
interval.
pulling. Oh, so
That's a
So
scrape
instead of
interval.
it's
It
not
runs on
going
schedule.
through, it's not going through 100,000
right.
logs to get
Okay,
the data.
yeah, okay.
It's incrementing the data on the node, on the broadcaster node, and then Prometheus just pulls it every whatever 5 seconds, 15 seconds, minute, whatever it is, and
Yeah.
whatever those totals are at those scrape intervals is what it's storing over time.
That seems to me, I mean, like a better better solution, but
Yeah, you can probably have like a extra Prometheus input for it, especially for this purpose. But yeah, we have to look into
that was
it.
going to be my other question. Can you just run like a separate Prometheus that's only pulling those
Yeah, you have metrics
things?
for
Or
the
I don't even know if that would help.
one for, it's possible for sure.
Yeah.
Don't know if it's the best way, but yeah.
All right. Well, I think we've kind of covered this topic. I don't know if we have
That
an
one
actual
into the
solution,
ground
but at
pretty
least
good.
there's at least some thoughts floating around now. So if anyone gets an epiphany in the middle of the night, write it down, and maybe we can get that implemented.
Very good. Cool. All right. So we got a couple more topics to go through. I'll jump into the Livepeer Innovators DAO, a couple updates there. So I got the domain up, and I got just a teaser website ready. I was really just messing around with it. I don't know if I'm going to keep it the way it is. I've been using ChatGPT to help me build it, so I kind of wanted to see how that went. Yeah, LivepeerInnovatorsDAO.com is the domain. We're pretty close to finishing up the logo contest. If we get the logo contest done, then we can move on to formalizing the DAO with a white paper or a light paper and handing out the DAO tokens. So, yeah, we're just going to see if we got 2 days and 21 hours left to submit. Joke Race hasn't been a great platform for this. It's been really tough to upload images and for people to do stuff. So anyway, I do have a link to the contest if you want to submit a couple ideas in the next 2 days. Please do so. Also, please share with your social. See if we can come up with a cool logo. So yeah, that's kind of an update with that. And once we get the DAO token launched, then we can get into building a couple, mandates and finding tools to actually run the retroactive grant round 1. So once we get a roll call of everyone who's in the DAO, we can start working on some voting and integrating some tools to run the contest. Or it's not a contest; it's a round. Run the first round. So yeah, that's kind of an update with that. Another topic I had was actually...
Is there a link to the website that you have up somewhere?
Here, DAO.com. Here, I will post it. There you go. Like I said, ChatGPT has been kind of writing it, so I don't really know how well or it's kind of The video background isn't really working unless you refresh it twice, and I don't know if the wording is right. And anyway, there's some standard text in there. I don't know. Just kind of
Yeah, no, I just wanted to take a peek.
Yeah.
Uh,
Pete, call you late.
Titan, I was gonna say, I don't know where this stuff's getting shared. I might be missing it, but maybe an updated forum post or something where people could be aware that this stuff's happening might be good, because maybe it's in a thread that people aren't subscribed to or something.
Yeah, under the governance channel, there's a thread there where we've been having some discussion, but I was
Oh.
kind of waiting for the
That's
yeah.
the worst.
I sh-
You can't discover them unless you're in them.
Right. Yeah. Again, communication stuff. Got to keep working on that. Yeah, I should probably put out a post updating people on these things. So, good point. I will do that. And if anyone wants to help me build the website, I should also put out some feelers there, and you can start building hours into the DAO so you can get compensated. So
Is
yeah.
it all custom coded at the moment?
No, it's using WordPress. So
Oh,
it-
okay.
we can do whatever we want. So if you are interested in kind of building a website or making it look nice or doing anything, we can use a CMS that we prefer, like WordPress, or we could hard code it or whatever we want to do. We can make it as fancy or as simple as we want. And I have a time tracker sheet of hours put into it, so I wasn't going to release that until we get an idea of who's in the DAO, and I wasn't going to do that until we got the logo. So maybe the website will just come a bit after, but yeah. But nonetheless, if you are interested in helping, then yeah, that would be great.
The abbreviation of Livepeer Innovators DAO is LID. If that gives anyone any ideas for logos, I don't know, just figured I'd throw that out there.
Lid.
Like an open
Okay,
jar.
well, yeah, I was using like a logo generator thing, and it kept throwing out lid for ideas too, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, but I couldn't come up with anything that actually looked good with lid on it. So
Yeah, like
but I do
jar,
think it was kind
lid,
of cool.
open jar, thinking outside the box, that kind of stuff.
There
That's
you
why
go.
that's why you're the designer.
Definitely not.
I also was trying to build the WordPress site on Akash network, like the decentralized cloud hosting platform. You can like host a WordPress site, but it really wasn't working, and I couldn't figure out how to like connect the domain to it, so I kind of gave up. But we could still revisit that idea. Then it could be like a decentralized WordPress hosting for the DAO. I don't know. Or is it just getting too fancy?
Simple is better to start. Centralize everything. Centralize it all.
In the same vein,
Ben's a big believer. Ben's a big believer in centralization. So.
I love centralization.
at the same time, like I was like wanted to use the decentralized platform, but it wasn't actually any cheaper than the centralized platform. Then I was like, I don't know. Anyway, CloudMos. We can try and figure that out if you want to, and if anyone wants to join me on that journey. So yeah, there's that. Yeah, does anyone else have any questions about the Livepeer Innovators DAO? Like I said, I haven't really done a forum post or an update. I should probably do that. Give people an idea of where we're at. But I feel like the people that are most involved are in this weekly chat anyway, so that's a good starting point.
Yeah, I think the key thing about this DAO working is making the voting process as simple and as efficient as possible. So it doesn't take a month to get people together to click a button, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like even a Discord bot to do on-chain voting would be awesome.
For like DAO decisions or for the actual round?
Isn't it the same thing?
I don't know. This is actually a question we need to discuss, because if we want to do like a round, how are we going to vote on who gets how much? And Or do we just use, like, these are the tools that I haven't quite figured out how to use yet, or what we're going to use. Because we're going to use Snapshot for, like, general DAO management. Like just whatever. But I don't know if Snapshot we can use it for, like, the round voting or something. I don't know. Or even how that's going to work.
You can definitely build a bot and attach it to a smart contract. And the reason I keep going back to a bot is because everyone's going to be in Discord anyway, or Telegram or whatever. So if you can keep everyone on the same platform without having to send people to different websites, it makes it a lot easier to get people to actually vote on stuff. I'm thinking kind of far ahead, but I think with DAOs, it's where things get sticky, is actually trying to get people together to vote.
Right. And I'm thinking, like, as for the actual submission of the people who are submitting, like, are we just gonna have that as like a WordPress plugin where they could just, and it'll just save it into our own database and then we can review it as a DAO? Or do we want to use like a Google form or like Typeform, or like, how do we want to go about that way, right? Collect submissions.
Yeah. Submissions as in like filling out a form with opinions and stuff and then sending it off?
Well, no, for the round specifically, right? Like you have to enter to be eligible to get the grant. Like someone's got to submit something saying like,
Right.
like, hey, this is what I've built. This is the address you should pay it out to, and X, Y, and Z. Like we need to know. We need information to judge whether something is grantable, right?
Yeah, I keep going back to it. That whole system can be put directly into Discord. Like whenever it comes down to like sending people to a different website, you're adding this like layer of friction that is just going to make it really difficult for a bunch of strangers on the internet to come together to look at a submission or something, right? If they have to go to some WordPress site from Discord, or they have to click a link in their email to go somewhere to look at a submission, to click buttons to do something, I don't know. I see a lot of lag.
Sure. This is why we need you on board, authority, so that we can make good decisions.
Oh, they're going to be great decisions.
And this is why I didn't want to make too many decisions until we actually kind of get a logo and then just like get the tokens handed out. And then from there we can do like a meeting where we can like plan how we're going to actually do the rounds and things like this, and communication channels and whatnot.
Yeah.
So anyway, we'll get the logo going and we'll get the tokens sent out, which should be a nice little vanity thing. Get started, be fun, and then we'll get into the thick of things. And maybe a website doesn't even make sense, right? So far I've spent $8 on this domain, so not a large sunk cost at this point.
It's a good domain.
But how much time?
To buy a domain didn't take long.
Well, no, just to build what's there.
Again, that took 10 minutes.
Okay. Well, it looks like you did a lot of work in 10 minutes. Then I didn't go through it very deeply, but
I think as a landing page, it's awesome. I think you did a pretty freaking good job if you're just using WordPress and ChatGPT.
Yeah, it's just like a pre-made theme, and then what to fill it in with. All the content was ChatGPT. It was like a pre-made theme, and then like all the wording is just ChatGPT. So
Nice.
And anyway, cool. Maybe the website is just a landing page with links to where to go. Like, hey, go to this Discord, and hey, look at our white light paper, and hey, this is where you apply. If someone wants to read up on what we do, I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, you could set up like a Git book as well. I have like a nice documentation section for what the DAO is and what it does and all that good stuff.
Or maybe the website is just a Git book.
Maybe.
Because isn't that simpler?
Love Gitbook.
Cool. Okay. Cool. I do have a couple more topics, but I'll open up to the floor here. I know that we have some new people joined us since we started. Pawn, Forkoonsman, Ad Astra, Marco. Do you guys have any topics that you have or want to bring up here? I'll open it up now if you guys want to jump in.
Nothing from me.
No topic for me either.
I will add that the community node is going to be sunsetting here pretty soon. So if you're using it, I would suggest starting to move off of it.
Good to know.
Now, is that being replaced by Forkoonsman and Zoop node infrastructure?
Yeah, so there will be a pay-for-use service that does come out of all this. Don't really have many of the details yet, but just know that we're aiming to be the, I don't want to say the low-cost provider, but all these other services provide you like just enough, capacity on the minimum paid, subscriptions that it's like you just surpass it and then you got to go to the ridiculously priced one. So we're looking to provide a service that's affordable for, the regular end user that just wants to, let's say, run Livepeer or set up any type of, blockchain app. So more info to come. I don't know, Zoop, if you want to add anything there, but it's in the works.
Yeah, nothing more till we get something out the door, but we're working on it for sure.
We're waiting on that Polygon node, guys. No pressure. I want that
I can
Polygon node.
If I can get that damn snapshot to finish extracting, good to go.
I think I'd like to use your guys' service because I keep spinning up more things. It's like whack-a-mole, trying to figure out which one to sign up for, which one to use.
Yeah, I can recommend it. I've been using the community notes for my broadcasters, so.
Yeah, I've been using Zoop's infrastructure for months and I haven't had any issues. I mean, now that I've said something, I'm sure it will break, but yeah.
Dude, what are you
That's how
doing,
this
man?
works.
Don't jinx him like that.
I'm
I used the
sorry.
community node for a while. It was that last little hiccup that I switched off. I just haven't switched back to it because everything's been running okay. But I appreciated the community node. It was very, very reliable.
It was very
fast.
timely too, because back when this all started, when we moved to Arbitrum, there wasn't many options. So
Yeah. Well, I'm glad everybody enjoyed using it, and don't want to let all that work go to waste. So trying to figure out how we can, make a service that's cheap enough for everyone to use, but keeps things going and gives everyone a reliable option. Outside of Arbitrum too. I mean, looking at all different chains.
very cool. I tried Pocket Network, but it seemed quite expensive.
Yeah. How'd that go? I know we were going back and forth on that.
I got my first bill and it billed my credit card, and I was like, no thanks.
Oh boy.
I thought you're supposed to pay in the Pocket tokens.
Nope, it's credit card. That's also why I'm like really confused by the entire Pocket Network. It's like they have they're their own chain secured by Pocket Network, which is fine, but like kind of unsecure. And then you pay by credit card, and I think that gets converted into Pocket tokens and then pays the Pocket Network participants. But you can't actually pay with Pocket directly. Like you can't do any on-chain payments.
No, that sounds convoluted.
So anyway, I think I used it for a week and I racked up like, I don't know, $14 in a week. And I was like, well, and that was for like only 2 nodes. Like I have like 9. I'm like, okay, well, yeah, I think it actually Infura and Alchemy are cheaper than this. So if I wanted to go with like a credit card paid subscription, I would have maybe gone with them. Anyway, and not to mention it was like really the RPC node itself was fine, but the dashboard was really glitchy, and apparently it was because they did a recent migration and blah blah blah, and they had to switch back, and I don't know, there were lots of announcements, but I was like, whatever, I understand the technical issues, but the pricing was just like not interested in, because it was also really unpredictable. Like I just wanted to pay like a set fee, but you pay per like query or pull, and just fine, but it was like I couldn't calculate how much it was going to cost. It was like 0.000000002 per request. I was like, I have to do math, and I didn't want to do that, so I tried it for a week.
Yeah, I don't know if you've used Anchor before. They're one to stay away from as well. They just straight up lie on their website about how much they charge, and it's definitely a lot more than they say. So, and Fura and Alchemy have always been the biggest, like, paid providers, like most reliable at least, for me.
Alchemy always reaches out when I stop paying. It's like clockwork. A couple days after I cancel.
Yeah, and then I tried ThirdWeb's free endpoint, and it's been great with 9 nodes, so just kind of went with them. Meantime.
That's awesome. I think they were having some issues on Polygon, so I couldn't use them. But Infura is doing well.
There we go. Okay, cool. Any other topics we'd like to cover? Brad? Anything?
Nothing from me specifically, but always open to feedback on the test streams I'm sending and the data provided.
Oh,
And the plug that it's always in a state of flux. I'm just changing it, and improving it, and hacking on it as time goes on. But it's started some pretty good conversations about selection and how we can do things differently or better. So it's been pretty fun to work on.
I think I asked you this in private, but were you going to publish the router? Are you going to push the router to the public Livepeer repository, or
I would have to. I don't know if that's ever going to go back to the public repository. I'd have to talk to Tom and them about it, because it's going to be. There's no test for it, and there wasn't testing for it before, and it's a relatively big update, so to speak, for that thing.
a complete rewrite, isn't it?
So yeah, I didn't delete any of the old stuff. It's still there, but added quite a few things. So I'd have to kind of test the waters on that, on how that would be received and the work around that.
Because
When to use it now, you just point to my clone from my repo and build it, so it's not that difficult.
Because I'm planning on using it. I'm going to be spinning up, I think, 3 more nodes where Livepeer Inc. isn't. So I'm going to be doing, I think, Japan, India, and somewhere else. I haven't quite decided yet. And the idea is I want to use the router for directing traffic to those areas. And so I was just wondering if you were going to publish it to the repository.
Are you going to set up any DNS at all for that? Let's just talk about Japan one only, because you still have to hit the 500 milliseconds. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll still set up. Good question.
So you'd have to set up DNS maybe to that for that region only, but the router should let you not have to get as granular in that, if that makes sense.
I have a question for you, Brad. I
Okay.
might have missed it, but what is the router exactly? Is it just for distributing orchestrators without GeoDNS, or what's
Yeah, it intercepts the GET orchestrator requests, and right now it uses like a geolocation method to find your closest orchestrator that you have hooked up to that router, and then it forwards it, gets the orchestrator info request, and sends it back. I've been using it on all of my EU and my New York nodes and my LA node. But what I'd found is, just going a little too far, but I needed to kind of set up some generic DNS to try to get the first get orchestrator request to go to the right one initially in the right location, because I was seeing one come from EU hitting my New York node and also EU hitting my LA node until before I changed that. But short answer to your question is it's a intermediate layer that could route get orchestrator requests to different orchestrators behind it.
And in itself, it just runs on next to your orchestrator or something, or like.
Yeah, I run it on the same machine. You don't have to run it on the same machine, but I do. When we initially made it, I think Titan was the one that started this, but he wanted to kind of get away from the GeoDNS problems, or some of the GeoDNS problems. And I wanted to make it because if it could be a way to distribute like VOD versus live stream workloads if we had any indication of what the stream workload was that it was asking for. So it's been an experience.
Yeah, but I think if we, propose a change where Mist server, for example, tags the streams with what kind of input it is, the Livepeer Inc. will probably go with it. I think that
we could just add a string to the get orchestrator request, right? Like job type. Yeah, and it just gets added to some, gets added all the way down the stack to that, I think.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Still have to hit 500 milliseconds though, no matter what happens. I'm not sure if that's different on VOD work.
Yeah, but at least you can have two different prices this way, and maybe a different video card for VOD if you really go up.
Yeah, it could be slightly farther away, because I know, because for the VOD type work, or just work that's not live stream, it's really live stream and everything else in my head. It can take a little bit longer to get back because somebody's not viewing it in real time. Now, you don't want it to take a whole minute to get back or anything like that, but I think even right now, the VOD work might have a 2x timeout buffer compared to live. I'm not sure though. Marco, you may know.
I'm not sure what the delay is on VOD. It's different from live, but yeah. Also, I'm not quite sure how parallelized it is. I know it runs on multiple nodes at the same time, but it might be good to have a lot of orchestrators do one segment at a very high quality. Then the other end, you might see the difference between segments then. So, but,
Cool. Well, that was my question for Brad, was whether it was going to get pushed, but sounds like I'll just be using your repo, which is totally fine.
Yeah, for now.
Yeah.
I have a lot going on.
Yeah. No. I'm not asking you to like write tests and stuff. Like I'm like just kind of curious. Like, there is no tests for the current router. The current router I don't think is used. I don't think it does anything. So like,
no, I don't think it is.
Couldn't you just push this and be like, well, here's something, or are they just not going to allow that because it doesn't reach their standards?
I don't know. It could happen. I just need to talk to Tom about it, or Raffle.
Fair enough.
I'm happy to help you get it set up, though, if you want to set time between us so we can get it rolling.
Yeah, I want to set up Livepeer Academy to accept the geolocation. So the other question I had was, if Livepeer Academy and Titan Node all go to the same endpoint, does it get the random selection twice, or is it counted as one endpoint and therefore only one opportunity for a stake and randomness selection? Because I was finding that Livepeer Academy wasn't showing up on your dashboard. And that's exactly when I was pointing it to Titan Node's nodes. And I'm wondering if it was just getting convoluted into one and being like, oh, this is not any different.
Well, I think, I'm trying to think here. I don't think it has anything to do with like the URL or the IP address.
No, but
I think if it returns the same get orchestrator, like the orchestrator info, and the address is the same. I don't recall if it's like the local node address or the on-chain address, but if the address is the same, it only hits once. So once that, so Livepeer Academy came in at 0.10 in the list, and Titan Node was in spot 25 or something. Once you hit 0.10 in the list, no, the Titan Node won't get erased because it just makes that stake 0. So the selection algorithm would always go past it.
Right.
But on the random side, it doesn't do that. It just picks a number. So in theory, it would work, but I'd have to go back and look.
Because when I was setting up Livepeer Academy to just go exactly to Titan Node, it would only show Titan Node and not actually Livepeer Academy stuff. And so I'm wondering if it like doesn't double up on the opportunity of streams.
I would think it would, but I need to go look and kind of walk it through.
Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up Livepeer Academy to then accept streams to all of the nodes that are away from the ingest nodes. So like Japan and India. So Livepeer Academy will be able to intercept that or accept that from the router and then direct it to a Titan node one that's over there. And then that prevents me from having to use the router on my production Titan node because I'm not sure if how well the router works yet. I don't want to like jeopardize that yet.
I understand. I've been using it on mainnet for months at this point.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, so
but my setup's a little less complicated than yours. You have a lot more nodes.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to my goal right now is to be like globally dispersed, right? Like even if people are like connected to my node in like India and there will be no streams to it, I just want like there to be an opportunity for somebody to pick up that stream in that area in case a broadcaster does want to spin up a broadcaster node over there, right?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And so like, yeah, those transcoders aren't doing any work and they probably won't ever because none of the work from Livepeer ingest nodes go to them, but hey, at least it's available for work, And then I could set up like 15 of these nodes spread out across everywhere. People could join, and then just like, yeah, we're waiting for demand. Like that's how this goes, right? And then the router would make sense in that point because then I don't have to deal with any of this GeoDNS stuff. I just want it to be the router. But like you said, that 500 millisecond thing can really kind of mess with it.
Yeah, you kind of have to see where they're going. Like I was experiencing, I don't know if it was my DNS provider or not, but you have to kind of see what IPs are hitting what router, and if it's coming from EU hitting LA, something's kind of off.
Right. So maybe like a layer of DNS and then a router and then.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think that would work to help you keep under that 500 millisecond session pool building.
Cool.
But you could just set like all of India as one in theory, right?
Sure, but what if someone's in like Sri Lanka or Nepal and it's like technically not India, right? So then it's like then it shoots off to New York, right? And I was hoping that even if it shoots off to New York, it would still work, but
I think what the issue was that trying to get the orchestrator request, because it still has to go to the orchestrator to get that information back before it gets sent back to the broadcaster. And we tried, if you remember, we tried caching that early on, but we were running into issues with the auth token. And I've never gotten back to try and refactor that or try it differently and cache it. Maybe just reaching out to the orchestrators. The router reaches out to the orchestrators like every minute and gets a new request or an orchestrator info response. So the auth token would reset every minute.
Yeah, that's
that would cut some round trip time down. So then it just hits the router, looks at its cache, sends that orchestrator info back, And if it's updating every minute or every 30 seconds, say, or something like that, it shouldn't have a problem. But I haven't tested it yet.
Yeah,
So that pulls the auth token from one orchestrator and gives it to the other one. Is that what's happening there?
No,
Should be
each
like that?
like the session ID is tied to the auth token. I can't remember exactly specifically how it
Yeah,
is,
no, and
but
it refreshes
it
like
makes
every 30
every
minutes.
30
but like
minutes or
it's
something like
27. It actually does it at 27, and then I guess it gives you a little buffer if there's an issue.
And I think it's block based, like it's expiration block, not specifically a time thing, but blocks.
Right, but I guess it comes out to like 10. There was an issue where like there was this thing called like that. It's in the GitHub of like there were these spikes that would happen every 27 minutes for some orchestrators were noticing this
Yeah.
a while back, and Rafael commented that it's the token refresh that's causing that spike to show. It's not actually sending more work, but it just shows on your like Grafana panel. It will show like that there's more work happening during that refresh, and I don't know the reason why, but he said that the refresh is I guess it's every 27 minutes, but it's really set for 30, but it gives you a 10% buffer, so that take off the 3 minutes from that 30, and then you get 27. But yeah, I just didn't understand how that would work, sending work from one orchestrator to another orchestrator if there's any issue with the token.
Yeah, I think you would have an issue. I think that is specific to each orchestrator. Maybe if you had the same local Ethereum account on each one, it might work. Because I think it's a signature type deal.
Yeah, I was just trying to understand what you guys were talking about with caching. That I thought that's what you were trying to get around was dealing with that issue, but it sounds like something different. I was kind of only half listening, so sorry.
Yeah, so didn't we try out the caching thing? Because I know mine caches right now. It just when the router gets hit, it just sends back what's cached.
It is the caching that it does right now is which one was the closest. Every time a get orchestrated request comes in, it does get sent on to that pre-selected closest orchestrator, and then the information comes back to the router, then to the broadcaster. So it adds a layer to it. But that's generally a pretty small trade-off with how mine is set up. But different setups, if it's sending it all the way to the West Coast of North America back to the EU, that's a big step. That's a big intermediate step, right?
Right. So you have to cache the auth token as well.
Yeah, it's the whole orchestrator info response that you need to cache. And I think it just needs, what it didn't do before was like preemptively reaching out to the orchestrators that you have hooked into the router to get that info, because the get orchestrator request right now is just the broadcaster address and a signature over that address. There's nothing special about it. You can just reuse it. Once you capture that, like the router could capture that request, save it, and then just keep sending that to the orchestrators that are hooked up to the router to get new orchestrator info responses. That would then, when an actual get orchestrator request comes from a broadcaster, it would look to what it's already got for orchestrator info responses and then just send that out. So it would cut off the leg of when it comes from the broadcaster to the router and then to the orchestrator and back to the router. It would cut off that leg from the router to the orchestrator.
Right, which would probably eliminate the need for the DNS layer in like up front. Like if all the requests went to New York, it would be able to get there and back within 500 milliseconds.
I would think so, for the most part.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. But the problem is you're going from like Mumbai to New York to Mumbai to New York back to Mumbai, because you got this like constant communication between, which doesn't really work. So yeah, it doesn't cache that information yet, right?
No, it doesn't. I don't think it'd be terribly difficult to implement that. But we'll see. I'm not sure when I can get to it.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, well, I'll just use the current router in its current form and just like try and get it to a closer router to begin with, and then that will kind of fix that problem. And then if we decide that that's like actually going somewhere, then we can like improve the router to like cache the auth token.
Yeah, I'm interested in your because I can test the caching part on my own stuff. You know, I'm interested to see how it works out with your more, I'm gonna say remote, but it's just regions that aren't covered by orchestrators or Livepeer Inc. orchestrators broadcasters. You know,
Yeah, I
I think
mean,
it's pretty cool.
it's pretty preemptive. Like, there's no. Although I will say, like Xenon, they don't use Livepeer ingest server locations. So my DNS, my GeoDNS, is only set up for Livepeer Inc. It's not set up for what they do. So,
that's what you were saying early on. It's like it's not gonna. The end game is not gonna be very specific locations.
Right, like
for broadcasters.
Well,
right?
Xenon specifically, they're like, we want to start up an Asia node, right? And it's like, okay, where in Asia? Because only Singapore do I have GeoDNS to Singapore. Like everything else goes to New York by default. So like, that's not gonna work. And I was like,
yeah,
I want to set it up so that like, if any broadcaster comes to the network, they will find my closest node, regardless of whether I've set up my GeoDNS correctly, because it's like all like, weird kind of just assumptions, right?
mm-hmm.
You need to switch to Cloudflare so it will do that stuff for you.
But
you don't have to like set like each city and each country and all that kind of stuff. You can just put like, this is where it is, whatever's the closest to it, just go to it.
Does Cloudflare do that?
Yeah.
Well, maybe I just need to leave Amazon and just go to Cloudflare.
I bit the bullet and did it, and it works out. I mean, again, I just use the Livepeer region, so it works for, but yeah, you don't have to get all, you don't go in there and tell it, like, you just tell it where the server is, and then it figures out where the request is coming from and routes it to the closest one.
Right.
I think it's by I think it's by ping time, but I'm not sure. I forgot since I've set it up, but if Zode's still on the line, I'm not looking here. He's the expert there.
Cloudflare. Cool. Well, maybe I'll just look into Cloudflare, and then if I can't get Cloudflare to do exactly what I want, then I'll have to integrate the router as well. But the nice thing is, if we do get the router up and going working, then we can do even further, like direct live video here, direct VOD there. Would be really, really helpful.
Yep. On this.
Yeah, no, the router sounds like it can do some cool stuff, but I was just saying, just as far as like the Amazon part of it that you're talking about, Cloudflare solves that part of it.
Cool.
On what I was going to say is, it's kind of on this topic and kind of on what Marco was saying about Prometheus earlier. I did add a discovery latency metric on my broadcaster. I might go ahead and submit that as a pull request, pull that out, and do its own thing, because it is kind of nice to see. Because like on my Prometheus, on my test broadcasters, you can see the discovery, like how much time in seconds it takes to get back the get orchestrator request.
That would be great.
Yeah,
I'd love to see that.
That would be.
And I've already done the work. I just got to pull it out. I just got to pull it out. I think it's its own commit already. I just need to pull it into a different branch and send it up.
I mean, I would like to see those results and compare them because I have a script running which does exactly those get orchestrator calls, but it's just a Python script, And so I'm curious to see what results you're getting in Singapore, because I had some weird issues.
Oh, you wrote that? You wrote that in Python?
Yeah. You can just reuse the signature and do it in another language.
I'll message you offline because I was having trouble with Python and gRPC, so I could use some help pulling my hair out.
Yeah, it took me a good while. It was I can probably help you with that. It's
I was close to giving up, so thank you. I could love the help. It's faster for me to just write another web endpoint on the Go Livepeer broadcaster and make it do the request. That's about where it was. So I'll message you offline about it though.
Cool. All right. We've basically covered all the topics. Another one was actually around CDN integration. I've had a few people message me privately that were asking about costs of using Livepeer, like specifically Studio. But their question was always around this, like, I'm one streamer and I have 50,000 viewers. How much does Livepeer cost? And I was like, well, this actually isn't. This sounds like a CDN problem that you're running into, not a transcoding problem. And I tried to explain the two, and I was like, well, Livepeer Studio, I believe, uses Amazon Web Services for its CDN. But I was like trying to figure out, like, I know there's Media Network out there. I haven't really been following up with their project and like whether they're still going during the bear market or what the development is there. But do we know of any other CDN networks that are decentralized or up and coming or around that have been doing well and that could integrate into Livepeer?
Marco, do you want to talk about that? Marco and I were talking about this before the call. So
one issue here is that like Livepeer runs on Catalyst, and maybe it's run mostly on Google Cloud Platform as far as I know, not Amazon, but it's different, I suppose. I wasn't very impressed with Media Network, but I did try it a long time ago, and I've heard from Mike and Papa Bear that Media Network was actually quite decent now, so that might be a good option too. But then I was myself thinking of using Swarm for a CDN, because it's basically storage like S3, where whatever you store on it is going to be accessible very quickly and distributed to multiple nodes. So it's kind of like a peer-to-peer network, but then you have dedicated infrastructure running behind it, which does that job for you. So, but I'm still working on that to test out that it's even a viable option or not. But yeah.
Wait, so we can
what
use.
about go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, what about storage, or it's like Storj? I saw Eric one time giving a presentation that with them about.
But that's why Livepeer interesting, right? They're doing IPFS and Storj and that kind of stuff. But I think that's more of a cold storage, which is unavailable sometimes. And if you want to serve media, you need to have it very reliable and quick. Otherwise, you still need to add centralized components in front to cache the stuff for you. So yeah, but maybe it's an option. I don't know how far Livepeer with Storj. I don't know if it's in there yet or not. Maybe it is.
Well, what about so Swarm would work as a CDN for live video?
Well, that's what we're going to try out. Like in theory, it should be quick enough. Like if it's comparable to S3, as they all claim it is, and there are some demos out there which use Swarm for VOD at least. I also saw one demo of using an RTMP live stream and serving that through Swarm. So I guess it's possible. It's more about how much it is going to cost and how much latency is there going to be end to end.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So, but Swarm, it would be uploading the video from the live streamer from like a transcoding unit to Swarm, and this Swarm would be distributing it to other nodes, which then would be able to view it from the public.
Yeah, so it's similar to what Elite Encoder was doing that in Livepeer itself, which is, it's a decent idea. You can do it from the browser too. You can do it from the media server, basically from any location. The question is just how you're going to play it back. If playback directly from Swarm is sufficient and quick enough, then that would be an interesting option to explore as a CDN.
Right, because Swarm, are these nodes like have high bandwidth, or is that kind of what it's designed for, or is it like cold storage where it's like bandwidth isn't really a big deal?
Well, it's meant to be hot storage, and you also, like, if you want to store something for a longer period of time, you have to pay for that. You pay for the amount of time you want to keep it online on the Swarm, and if that expires, it's nodes can delete it. So you don't want to necessarily use it for a long time anyway. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Like another layer to that would be if like the orchestrators themselves started running Swarm nodes, right? So then
Yeah.
right on the orchestrator gets put onto the Swarm network, and then the replication gets sent there. But right now, everything goes back to the broadcaster anyway. So maybe that doesn't make a ton of sense.
Well, yeah. So in my case, I will use the media server to upload it to Swarm, and then we will try to view it directly. Otherwise, we use that same media server to serve it to the viewer, because bandwidth is the number one constraint in the media pipeline. It's tough to deal with that issue. So if you can offload that bandwidth to Swarm, because bandwidth usage is essentially free on Swarm, you pay for storage. That's why it's much cheaper than running your own solution for that. Or if you go to Amazon, for example, you pay per viewer or per gigabyte transfer to the viewer. So it becomes very expensive very quickly.
Right. So the unknown is whether Swarm can deliver it to a large amount of people reliably.
Yeah, I guess that, because in the end it's still a bunch of nodes like Livepeer has in the backend, right?
Right.
They might have more nodes running behind it, but we'll see how well it scales or handles the increased load.
So what you're saying is it's a definite maybe.
Mm-hmm.
There we go.
But I
The
think
theme, the theme of the whole thing, definite maybe.
yeah, but yeah, you have one app which already runs on Swarm, which is Etherna, which is kind of like YouTube. And of course, Lead Encoder also had a proof of concept working, but that was on a small scale at least. But yeah, should be doable.
Sounds like a great solution if it works. Makes me want to spin up a Swarm node. Got all this bandwidth, might as well use it.
Well, they don't have the Livepeer token. You know how we have it on. Like if we go just by ETHs, there's not a lot of income for the amount of nodes that are on there. And Swarm has even more nodes and not a lot of demand at the moment. So, you know, it's. I mean, you can run it. It's fine. They have very good tools and documentation out there.
So Livepeer could be the incentive for providing work to the Swarm network.
Yeah, might be a match made in heaven, right?
Because we're pumping out large amounts of video, and I'm sure people using Swarm are uploading like 10 kilobyte JPEGs, and it's like, oh, really not much meat there, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, media will be a lot of throughput, and I don't know if Swarm is really focusing on media at the moment, but it would be a nice supplement to media network, maybe.
Media network? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Right, because media network is the WebRTC DCDN, right?
Well, I haven't really kept up with development from them, but if they're usable, then why not? You know, running your own infrastructure is a lot of work. You have to load balance and make sure they stay online all the time. Yeah.
Right. Very good. Cool. All right. Well, that I appreciate that input onto the CDN solution. I didn't realize Swarm would actually fix that problem. I thought it was just a storage thing like Arweave or IPFS or Filecoin, I should say, more or less. But it sounds like it's more robust and can handle transmitting of the data so that it can be actually served around the world as well.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Any other topics while we're here? All right. I do appreciate you all being here. This was a great talk, and I think we covered lots of topics. A quick rundown of what we went through and through the splitting of stake and the random stream selection. I think the overall consensus there is, it's just a growing pain with the network growing, and as more orchestrators come in and the demand gets even tighter, that will probably fix itself. We can talk about the randomness selection percentage change. So if anyone wants to put forward a proposal or some sort of forum post to maybe argue what it should be and the benefits of that, I think that would be a good opportunity. Otherwise, I think it'll probably just stay as is. Yeah, we talked about the Introspection and Prometheus and a couple CDN stuff and Livepeer Innovators DAO, and a lot of great topics. So I do appreciate you all being here. This was another great week. I'm going to try and line up a guest speaker for next week. But in the meantime, I do appreciate you all being here and developing the world's open video infrastructure. So thanks again, and we'll see you next week. Cheers.
See you. Bye.